Hi, I'm good. Sure. Um,
Hey, so we're not live yet. All right. So if you could just update that it's going to be about 30 seconds a minute, and then we're going to jump live. Okay. All right. Just breathe. Hey Maya, so I'm going to be working in the background. How it's going to work is that it's going to be about 30 seconds to a minute of just an intro, and then Sean's just going to take it from there.
okay.
It should last around 20 to 30 minutes. Just Sean's going to ask questions, and hopefully we get some responses from the audience. They could jump in and ask the appropriate questions.
Is there a estimated audience size?
It's usually around 20 folks.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we should get some questions. So we'll see. We'll see. All right. I'm gonna start it.
Maya. Yeah, so I'm Maya, and I am a technical recruiter at Facebook, based in Chicago, but I recently just moved back to the Bay Area. Prior to joining Facebook, I was a sorcerer in machine learning at Google. Then prior to Google, I was at Cisco within a smaller bet called Cisco Meraki in a hybrid role. So in a hybrid recruiting coordinator role where I did everything scheduling related. So being the recruiter's right-hand person, as well as recruiting for my own pipelines. Yeah, I kind of fell into recruiting, honestly. I got into it. I graduated from Pepperdine University in LA. And then after graduating college, figuring out that LA's job market is just really tough, I moved up to the Bay Area to be with my now wife, girlfriend at the time. And I got into recruiting from a contract position at a company called Revel Systems, where I was doing HR coordination, a little bit of everything, and kind of got introduced into the recruiting world and then joined an executive search firm called Wilton and Bain. It was awesome. I had a lot of fun. Yeah, it was very, very fun. No, that's a good question. I would say people, like I'm a huge people person. Like I love working with others, helping others. I love having the opportunity and the chance to really open doors and give people the opportunity at their dream jobs or with their dream company. Mhm. No, so I actually studied theater in college. Um, and I just am a huge I've always been a people person. I've always been great with other people. Um, and I just was trying to figure out what is a career path that would allow me to really climb the ladder and still work with people, but didn't require me to go back to college. Um, and when I was working at Revel Systems, one of my coworkers mentioned, like, yeah, I got into recruiting as a recruiting coordinator, and that really helped me understand more about what it's like to be a recruiter. Not that you have to be a coordinator before you can be a sourcer or what have you, but it's definitely a great avenue to step into or kind of get your foot wet, for lack of a better phrase. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know a lot about all of them. I would say recruiting coordination is core admin, it's core scheduling, it's core being serving as like that right hand person, that gatekeeper between the candidate, the recruiter, and the hiring managers or the interviewers. So that person is like the know all in terms of just making sure that every person involved in figuring out and assessing a candidate is there, is present, and is the appropriate person on the panel, right? Then you have the sourcer as it relates to the funnel. The sourcer is the person that really works at the beginning or the top of the funnel, as we like to call it. There's the person that's really going and engaging hard to find candidates, or engaging candidates that are already employed, or engaging candidates that aren't necessarily actively looking. There tend to be Sources tend to go after candidates that are hard to fill roles, or are roles that are in high demand but don't have as many qualified active candidates. And then recruiters, depending on where you're working, if you're in high tech recruiting or if you're in kind of like the middle stage, early stage startups, will look different, as well as sourcers will look different. A sourcer at a non high tech company like versus a Facebook or Airbnb will look different than if you were at one of the other. But in a nutshell, recruiters are typically the people that close candidates. So the people that help the candidates actually get their offer and become an employee of that entity or of that company. Yeah, I wouldn't say face to face, because every single entity or every single person within the funnel can be face to face outside of COVID. However, I would say where the recruiter really plays the major and key role, the core element of a recruiter's job is to close, is to get a candidate to go from a candidate to an employee. I would say the recruiter has the sourcer still does too. Sourcers have a large amount of control, and I wouldn't, maybe not control, but they have a large amount of say as it relates to who gets through the funnel, because again, they are the people that are assessing the top of the funnel. So in order for you to get to a recruiter, depending on the role and the company that you're working at, you typically have to go through a sourcer. If not, then if it was a recruiter working full cycle, then it's different. Um, so I would say that it can look very different, just again depending on the business and the company. Favorite memory. I would say, yeah, I have so many. I would say one would be one of my very first hires when I was at Cisco Meraki was a candidate that I self-sourced from a Facebook group that I was a part of. And I just found them. I found the member, excuse me, reached out, got them engaged, got them excited, invited them to coffee. Oh, how many days that we could have coffee in person with people. But coffee, showed them around the office, and just got them really excited about even thinking about potentially leaving their current company at the time. Introduced them to a hiring manager, invited them out to happy hour, company happy hour, and yeah, I know that that particular employee or that particular candidate became an employee at Cisco Meraki, which was very exciting. Yeah. What advice would I give someone who's looking to get into recruiting? I would say, well, there's several things I can say. I would try to understand more about what you really want to do. Like, what about recruiting what about recruiting excites you? And in that excitement, can you pinpoint what type of role in recruiting would be your best strong suit? Is it more so the actual core element of recruiting? Is it the finding people? Is it closing people? Is it scheduling people? Is it the operations, the data, like end of that? There's just so many different avenues that you can really go in the world of recruiting that I would just try to get more granular early on so that you know where to really start. Because if it's, I really don't know, I just want to get into recruiting any way I can, then I would suggest going into a coordinator role. Or if it's, I'm coming from sales, I'm coming from marketing, and I really, really, really love the competitive aspect of it, then I would say go to an agency and become a sorcerer. Or even an associate. You can really go in recruiting so many different avenues. So I think the best advice that I could give someone is to just think about what you really want to do in the beginning of your career. Yeah, so it's basically a pipeline thing. So different people recruit for and source for different pipelines because we're such a large organization. So high tech recruiting, anything is just segmented based off of the pipeline and the organization in which you're working. So Gen Suite just means general software engineering, which means anything software engineering as a generalist related is what my pipeline focuses on. And if you look before that at Google, it was machine learning. So all machine learning engineers was what I was before. But means former Googler. Being empathetic and understanding, I think, are huge. Just because you have the power to say yes or no to someone does not mean that you deserve the right to say yes or no just because you're having a bad day and you don't understand that that person could also be having a bad day. Um, I just think that, not forgetting that everyone's human and no one's perfect, and just being understanding in that people go through things personally outside of just interviewing, and not everyone has the ability to just stop and focus on just interviews at that time. And I think having that ability to empathize with your candidates will allow you to be a stronger recruiter for them and advocate for them both internally and externally. I would say, yeah, I would say it's a good mixture. It's like, yeah, I would say about 60 to 55% of my time is spent on the phone, and the rest of that is admin, like sourcing, finding people, going through and making sure all the paperwork is together, etc., working with cross-functional partners. It's a mixture of a day. Yeah, it it definitely does. Yeah, I've used Green Day, excuse me. I've used Greenhouse. I've used at Facebook and Google, we use our own internal systems, so that's that. But at Cisco, we use Greenhouse mainly. Um, the main systems we've used, or I've used. I love that question. I'm actually thinking of going. I'm kind of trying to figure out what I want to do. Personally, I have a lot of things going on that makes me stop and think about if I even really want to move into something next. If I kind of just want to sit in this role and just live and breathe and chill because I'm pretty comfortable. But I think my most ideal next role will probably be more so in the leadership capacity. I can see myself being a really good mentor for aspiring recruiters, sourcers, coordinators, especially at Facebook. I can see myself being like a lead in the recruiting coordination avenue just because I have a really strong passion for candidate experience, and that is recruiting coordinators are at the forefront of that. Good question. No, not really. I can honestly say that Google and Facebook operates very similar. There are differences, but I would not say that there are big differences. There are several things. If I'm just looking at a naked resume, I'm just looking for them. I'm looking to clearly understand the impact that they made. I shouldn't have to question it. I shouldn't have to dig I shouldn't have to look longer at it. I shouldn't have to look any longer at a resume than 5 minutes to understand the impact that they built and the impact that they made. Um, that's the main thing I'm looking for from at least for my engineers. Obviously, for different roles, it's a different thing. I'm assuming that is if I'm interviewing for other people internally on my team. If I'm looking for people internally on my team, I'm just looking for a key role player, a team player, right? Someone who is open minded, can really live in ambiguity, is able to just pick up a pen and keep going as time shifts, as things go. It's kind of the word of tech, right? Working in the tech industry, you have to be able to shift and navigate as things change because things will change. If I'm answering that question as it relates to candidates, I would just say a number of things, right? Someone who's understanding, someone who again is a team player, someone who is excited about the employer that I'm working for and the role in which I'm trying to fill. That's so funny. My wife and I left the Bay Area. We moved to Chicago. We were there for about a year and then we came back. um, how did I get into the Bay Area? So my wife is actually from here. She's born and raised in the Bay Area. And that's really how I got here, honestly. And I just happened to, I've always had a headhunter's mindset when it comes to figuring out how in the heck am I going to feed my family? Like I'm a human at the end of the day, and I'm always focused on putting food on the table and ensuring that I'm doing something that makes me feel fulfilled, but also is paying my bills. And I knew that graduating from Pepperdine with a theater degree, that my options were limited. And LA's market, I just did a lot of market research, honestly, figured out quickly that LA's job market was not directly working for a person that had a resume that I did at that time. And my wife was like, maybe we should move to the Bay Area. The tech industry is thriving, it's booming. Like we should try it. It's popping. And I don't know the year off the top of my head. I really don't. I just know, I honestly don't. I graduated college in 2015. So I would say probably around then, like 2015, 2016-ish, maybe around that time. Um, yeah, we both just, we said, hey, like maybe we should just continue to do market research and see what other opportunities are available. We literally just did job searches based off large cities, and whichever city had the most jobs with the most reasonable MQs or minimum qualifications for the job postings is how we identified which city made the most sense for a new grad. And so at that time, the Bay Area just had a lot of different opportunities for someone coming directly out of college. I worked all throughout college, so I had the work experience. I just didn't have the direct working experience, right? If you would talk to me at the time, then you would hire me, and that's what I needed. And the Bay Area gave me that option. I mean, there's so many acronyms. Honestly, honestly, sales is recruiting. And for people, yeah, it's essentially that. And that's just to keep it 100, to be 100% candid. That's exactly what it is. And not a lot of people like to say that it's sales, but I mean that's just what it is, especially if you're working in high tech. Um, Acronyms. So, are you meaning like slogans that we use, or? Hmm. Yeah. So top of funnel, bottom of funnel, middle of funnel. There's P, which means the candidate. There's metrics, right? We have metrics as well. There's what are your PTRs, which are considered pass-through rates. It's as a recruiter, as a sourcer, or anything that's in a core production element of a role has a core PTR, meaning if I have a goal at hiring 6 people, what are my PTRs? How many people am I putting through the funnel at every part of the funnel? And how many people in that stage are passing? And that's what a PTR is. So I can keep going, but that's essentially one of our core acronyms that we use. We do. Or OKR, essentially, which are objectives and key results. OKRs as well, which are pretty much objectives and key results, meaning you have your goal, and then you have underneath that, you have key goals that directly relate to the impact that you're building within the entity or within the business in which you're working. No, actually, we moved there. So we moved to Chicago for a year, this past year, and then COVID happened and we came back. Ooh, that's a good question, Faith. I would say agency recruiting, depending on what your dreams are. Like think about what you work like. What are your dream companies? I had a dream list. I feel like every recruiter, once you get into the business, has a dream company list of companies that they aspire to work for. Think about that list and then think about and then do some research and figure out where did those people come from to get there. And so in general, my thoughts on agency versus corporate are they're one and the same, really. It's agency teaches you how to do the bare minimum, bare bones. Don't be afraid of hitting the ground hard to achieve your hiring goals that corporate recruiting looks for. So agency recruiting is more so focused on getting butts in seats, whereas corporate recruiting is more so figuring out how do we find the best people for our company? How do we help them grow? How do we help them? It's more like personal, I would say. The biggest difference is if you were just to keep it simple, directly, straight to the point. I say all that to say, like, what are your goals? Because if you care about more so, making more money and being able to get into the industry as quickly as possible and staying there for X amount of time. And then once you're there for a couple of years, then you will definitely get into a good corporate role. A lot of companies like Google hire a lot of their sorcerers from agency companies. And a lot of them who come from agency roles that go to Google do very well. So I have to say that there are differences and they're interesting. I would just say, again, one is more personal and one is more metrics, numbers driven. Yeah. Very weird interview or funny interview. Not off the top of my head, honestly. I mean, I wouldn't say weird. I would just say there people are human and things happen. Like I have had several times where people have had to pause because they had to use the restroom, or people have had to pause because their child needs their attention and they have to stop and they have to refocus their energy. I'm a parent, so I understand. It's kind of like I'm just one of those people where I don't it doesn't I don't know. I don't know. I guess I didn't answer that question directly, but um, yeah. Ooh. Yeah, I guess I would have a lot of follow-up questions to that. Like what part of tech are you trying to get into? Are you trying to go into more engineering? There's a lot of avenues in which you can really get into it because I'm in tech, but I'm not an engineer. Um, Recommendations for a recent grad. Yes. First recommendation I would definitely recommend is get an internship anywhere and just learn, get you a mentor, get you someone who's doing the job that you want to be doing in the next 3 years. Don't say 5, don't say 10, the next 3 years, because 3 years is closer than 5. And typically, as you're looking at your companies, I would just also recommend just making a short list, a top 5, like super big dream companies that you want to work for, and then having a short list of companies that are more attainable right now. And then find the roles for that directly qualify for you as a new grad, meaning look at the job description, actually read the job description. I know that's kind of archaic to say, but really do read it. Look at the minimum qualifications and see if you meet at least 4 or 5 of those qualifications. If you don't, then you probably won't get past the application. So those would be the key recommendations that I would say. Well,